Before you go, I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below so we can see how far kindness travels. Your words might just inspire someone else tonight. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We've got another powerful tale coming your way tomorrow, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Until then, stay kind, stay curious, and remember, sometimes the smallest act of compassion changes everything. See you in the next story. Michael Reyes had never been a man of many luxuries. At just 36, his hands were already calloused from years of labor, and his back ached more often than not. He lived in a small rental house on the outskirts of Evansville, Indiana, with his 7-year-old daughter, Sophie, who was the only light left in his life since his wife passed away in childbirth. Most days, Michael worked 2 jobs, mornings at the auto shop and nights stocking shelves at the grocery store. Life wasn't easy, but it was honest, and he did what he could to keep food on the table and smiles on Sophie's face. That evening, the cold November wind was biting, and the rain had turned from a drizzle into a full downpour. Michael had just picked up Sophie from her aftercare program, and they were headed home when he noticed someone sitting on the curb outside the old, shuttered diner, barely a silhouette in the storm. As his headlights passed, he caught a glimpse of a teenage girl, soaked through, hugging her knees to her chest, with a look in her eyes that reminded him of someone holding their breath, waiting to be noticed, but terrified they might be. He drove a few feet past before stopping. Sophie looked up from her picture book in the back seat, brows furrowed. "Daddy, is she okay?" Michael looked at his daughter, then into the rearview mirror, torn between concern and caution. But his heart, trained by loss and softened by love, wouldn't let him drive on. He made a U-turn and pulled up slowly. "Hey!" he called through the rolled-down window, keeping his voice gentle. "You all right out here?" The girl flinched, startled, but didn't move. Her lips were pale. Her jacket clung to her like a second skin. "Just waiting for the bus," she mumbled, but there were no bus lines running this late in their part of town, and both of them knew it. Michael hesitated, then reached into the glove box and pulled out an unopened granola bar. "At least take this," he offered. She reached for it, with trembling fingers. Sophie, watching closely, unbuckled her seatbelt and leaned forward. "Daddy, can we help her? Please." That was it. Michael nodded slowly and stepped out into the rain. He didn't know her name, where she came from, or what her story was. But he saw enough to understand that tonight she needed someone to care. Maybe just for an hour. Maybe for a night. Maybe for the first time in a long while. He opened the passenger door and said quietly, "If you need somewhere dry just for tonight, you're welcome at our place. No pressure, just warmth and a warm meal." And in that moment, drenched, uncertain, and on the edge of something unknown, the girl nodded. Michael had no idea that this single act of kindness would change everything. The drive back home was quiet, except for the hum of the heater and the occasional sniffle from the back seat. Sophie leaned her head against the window, watching raindrops race each other down the glass. In the passenger seat, the girl, Ellie, she finally said her name was, sat stiffly, holding the granola bar, but not eating it. Her wet clothes soaked into the seat. But Michael didn't care. He'd thrown a towel over her shoulders, and now all he wanted was to get everyone inside, dry and safe. The house wasn't much. Just 2 bedrooms, a narrow kitchen, and a living room with a couch that had seen better days. But it was warm. It smelled like cinnamon and old wood, and it was the only home Sophie had ever known. "Make yourself comfortable," Michael said, setting a small pot of soup on the stove. "Bathrooms down the hall, towels in the cabinet. Take your time." Ellie didn't say much. She nodded, quietly slipping down the hallway with her backpack clutched tight to her chest. Michael watched her go, concern rising in his chest like a tide he couldn't hold back. She looked young, maybe 19 at most, too thin, too quiet. He knew the signs. Life had done something to her. While she was in the bathroom, Sophie pulled Michael aside. Is she going to stay the night? He hesitated. Just tonight, sweetheart. She needs a place to rest. Sophie nodded, serious beyond her years. She looks sad. Michael knelt down to her level. Yeah, she probably is. 20 minutes. Later, Ellie reappeared, wearing one of Michael's old hoodies, comically large on her small frame, and a pair of Sophie's spare sweatpants. She looked a little more human now. Her hair was still damp, but her eyes had softened. She sat quietly at the table as Michael ladled out bowls of soup. You don't have to talk about anything, he said gently, sliding a bowl toward her. Just eat, rest, that's all. But after a few bites, Ellie spoke. Thank you for not asking too many questions. Michael met her gaze. You don't owe me anything. She swallowed hard, like she hadn't heard those words in a long time. People usually want something, she said softly. A favor, a story, a reason. Michael sat back in his chair. Sometimes, people just help. For the first time, a flicker of disbelief crossed her face. Like the idea of kindness without a catch was something foreign. Later that night, after Sophie went to bed and the house fell quiet, Michael set up a blanket and pillow on the couch. Ellie thanked him again, still distant, still guarded. But as he turned off the lights, she whispered, You remind me of someone I used to know, before things got complicated. Michael didn't press her. He just nodded and whispered back, Well, whoever he was, I hope he made you feel safe. She didn't answer. But as the rain continued tapping gently on the windows, for the first time in a long while, Ellie slept. And Michael, he had no idea just how much that one quiet dinner would ripple into the days to come. The next morning, sunlight crept through the blinds, casting golden stripes across the living room floor. Michael was already up, sipping coffee at the kitchen table, the kind that tasted more like survival than pleasure. Sophie sat cross-legged on the floor with her cereal, humming to herself, her hair still wild from sleep. But what caught him off guard was Ellie. She had woken early before him, and had already folded the blankets, washed the bowls from last night, and was now quietly drying dishes by the sink. She wore the same oversized hoodie, but something in her face had shifted. She looked lighter, like a weight had been lifted just a bit. You didn't have to do all that, Michael said, standing slowly. Ellie glanced over her shoulder and gave a small shrug. Old habits, she muttered. Michael nodded, letting the silence settle between them. As he went to grab his keys for the hardware store, he had a shift starting in 40 minutes. Ellie surprised him again. I'll be gone before you're back, she said, not looking at him. You've done enough. Michael paused. You don't have to rush out. Stay another night if you need. No strings. She hesitated, then finally turned to face him. I can't, she said. People are looking for me. That stopped him cold. People? He asked carefully. Are you in trouble? Ellie smiled, but it was hollow. Not that kind of trouble, she whispered. The kind that smells like money and control. Michael didn't ask more. He could see it, the pain behind her eyes, the careful way she guarded every word. He knew what it meant when someone was running, not from the law, but from something worse. A life that looked perfect from the outside, but felt like a prison on the inside. I'm not who you think I am, she added quietly, as if that might change his opinion. I don't think you're anyone, Michael replied with a small smile. Not until you decide to tell me. That's when she reached into her backpack and pulled out a photo. It was slightly crumpled, but the faces were clear. Her in an expensive white dress, standing beside a tall man in a tuxedo with the kind of forced smile you see in political ads. The caption on the back read, Isabella Morgan, Charity Gala, NYC. Michael stared at it. You're her? He asked, stunned. She nodded. That's my legal name. Ellie is what I call myself when I can finally breathe. He didn't say anything for a long moment, just set down his keys, walked over, and poured her a second cup of coffee. Doesn't matter what your last name is, he said. You're safe here. Her lip quivered for just a second, then she nodded. Later that day, when Michael returned home, Ellie was gone. Blanket folded, mug washed, door locked. But on the table sat a note, neatly written. You didn't ask for anything, and somehow gave me everything. I'll be back. He didn't know when or if he'd see her again. But something in his gut told him this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. 3 days passed. The house was quieter than usual, like it was holding its breath. Michael tried not to think about her, but every time he walked past the couch, still fluffed from where Ellie had slept, or noticed the coffee mug she had washed and stacked just a little differently than he would have, the memory returned. Sophie asked once, "Daddy, is Ellie okay?" And he just smiled and said, "I hope so, baby." But on the 4th morning, as he stepped outside to grab the mail, something was different. A sleek black SUV was parked across the street, its engine humming low. Michael's heart kicked up. That kind of car didn't show up in his neighborhood, unless someone had made a wrong turn, or they were looking for something. Or someone. Then, the passenger door opened. Ellie stepped out. Except, this wasn't the Ellie he remembered. She was clean, polished, wearing a tailored coat, real leather, boots, and a silk scarf wrapped around her neck. Her hair was brushed back, and her eyes, once dim and guarded, now held fire and purpose. She crossed the street slowly, holding a manila envelope in her hands. Michael met her halfway. "You came back," he said, keeping his voice low but steady. "I said I would," she replied, with the faintest smile. Behind her, the SUV stayed running. "I don't have long," she continued. "They think I'm meeting a lawyer." Michael glanced at the envelope. "What is this?" "It's everything I could give without setting off alarms. 25,000 in cash, a check under a dummy name, and an enrollment voucher for Sophie. There's a private school 2 miles from here. It's quiet, safe. She deserves better than this town can give." He was stunned. "Ellie, I didn't help you for this." "I know," she said quickly. "That's why it matters." There was silence. Wind brushed the trees. A neighbor's dog barked in the distance. "I grew up in a mansion," Ellie said, her voice shaking slightly. "Servants, limos, private jets. But not once did I ever feel seen. Until that night in your kitchen, eating soup from a cracked bowl, listening to Sophie laugh about her drawing of a flying unicorn. I felt real." Michael swallowed hard. "I just did what anyone should do." "No," she said firmly. "You did what most people don't." She handed him the envelope. Their fingers touched, and for a moment she held his hand. "I can't stay," she said. "But I needed you to know, because of you, I'm going back to fix things. On my terms." Before he could respond, the SUV honked lightly. She turned, walking back with a quiet confidence that hadn't been there before. Michael stood still, the envelope tucked under his arm, the words replaying in his head. "You didn't ask for anything, and somehow gave me everything." And just like that, she was gone again, but this time, it didn't feel like goodbye. It felt like the kind of beginning money couldn't buy, and kindness always promised. Weeks passed. The envelope Ellie had left sat in Michael's nightstand, unopened. For days, it wasn't that he didn't trust her. He did. But accepting something like that, $25,000 and a chance to rewrite his daughter's future, felt heavy, like it came with a cost he couldn't quite name. But then the bills stacked higher. Sophie's winter shoes were too small, and her teacher quietly mentioned that the school library didn't have the kind of books she should be reading at her level. So one evening, after Sophie fell asleep holding a flashlight, under the covers, again, Michael opened the envelope. Inside wasn't just money, there was a letter, handwritten, folded with care. Dear Michael, you taught me what it means to be seen without judgment, helped without question, and loved without condition, even just for a moment. This isn't payment. This is a seed. For Sophie, for you, for what comes next. I hope it grows. With gratitude, Ellie. Or Isabella, if we're being formal. That night, he didn't sleep much, but by morning he had a plan. He enrolled Sophie in the private school 2 miles away. The entrance interview was a blur of crayons, nervous smiles, and a tiny backpack swinging on her shoulders. She got in. The principal said she had a rare kindness. Michael just smiled. She gets that from her mum. The check helped cover tuition. The cash, that went to fixing the roof, replacing their busted heater, and finally buying Sophie the sketchbook she kept staring at every time they passed the art supply aisle. Life didn't magically transform. Michael still worked 2 jobs. He still packed lunch with off-brand peanut butter and made rent stretch farther than it should. But now he had room to breathe, to plan, to hope. And every so often, on quiet nights, when Sophie was drawing unicorns or space cats in her new sketchbook, Michael would check the mailbox. No letters came, no black SUV, no sign of Ellie, until a snowy Thursday in January. Michael returned from work to find a single envelope taped to the door. No stamp, no return address. Just one word, Bloom. Inside was a photo. Ellie, standing in front of a women's shelter in New York, smiling wide, arms around 2 young girls. Behind them, a mural with her handwriting. Kindness is louder than money. Michael stared at the picture for a long time. Then he smiled. He taped it to the fridge, next to Sophie's drawing of the flying unicorn. And that night, while tucking her in, he whispered, You know, sometimes helping someone is like planting a flower you may never see bloom. But that doesn't make it any less worth it. Sophie blinked sleepily. Like Ellie? Michael nodded. Exactly like Ellie. And in the quiet of their little home, warm, worn, and filled with laughter, Michael finally understood. He hadn't just helped a girl in the rain. He'd helped a heart find its way home. We hope this story touched your heart as deeply as it touched ours. Now, we want to hear from you. Have you ever met someone who changed your life in an unexpected way? Through kindness, a helping hand, or simply being there when you needed it most? Or maybe you were that person for someone else? Tell us in the comments below. Share where you're watching from, your city, your country, and let's see how far this message of compassion and connection can travel. This channel isn't just about storytelling. It's about building a community where real moments matter. Your comment might be the light someone else needs tonight. And if this story moved you, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss what's coming next. We've got another powerful story premiering tomorrow, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. It's about second chances, broken promises, and how even in the darkest hour, someone's kindness can be the beginning of everything. Go ahead, leave a comment below. We're reading every single one. And thank you, truly, for being here.